recent years, I have grown greatly. I have changed, innovated, and reshaped myself. I took the world by storm. I conquered it, surrendered to it, but have always rose again. I was the first to be home to 1 million people. I was the first to embrace a multicultural society. The first to create a network of roads which connected people and new ideas. I nurtured leaders and visionaries. I am a melting pot of cultures and beliefs. I hosted gatherings and major international events. I am known in the world for the richness of my cultural and scientific research. I have built wondrous technological and scientific hubs and a solid and diversified production system. I am the cradle of the largest number of parks, natural reserves, and the biggest agricultural system in Europe. I am open-minded, inclusive, dynamic, and sustainable. Throughout the centuries, I have reinvented myself many, many times. My name is Roma, and I am ready to be reborn again.
Good morning to everybody. I am Paolo Glisenti, General Commissioner of Italy at Expo 2020 Dubai, and I would like to welcome here you all to this Italian Business and Decarbonization, a just and inclusive transition event, organized in collaboration with the UN Global Compact Network Italy, which is, as you know, is the national reference to the UN Global Compact. And I would like to thank for the help and support in this, first of all, the Italian network chairman, Marco Frey, and the executive director, Daniela Bernacchi. And also want to really thank for the pleasure and the honor she has given us for her presence here, Sandra Ojambo, CEO and Executive Director of the UN Global Compact, and the Italian Minister of Sustainable Infrastructure and Mobility, Enrico Giovannini, for being here with us again today. Thank you very much, everybody. I am very honored, in particular, to host this event in the Italian pavilion, which, as you probably know, is the first ever carbon-free pavilion ever made in the history of Expo. So it's a model for future decarbonization, practical pilot projects on the ground, today hosting you all here. And this gives us a great pleasure to create the opportunity for the launch of the position paper on decarbonization, which is a document, in my view, that explores the commitment and the concrete actions of the Italian companies towards a net zero economy. So again, thank you all for being here and making this event for us a very important milestone in Expo, in our participation in Expo, and in the Italian strategy for decarbonization. Almost 30 Italian companies are the underwriter of the UN Global Compact Association participants, and among those 30 companies, I just want to mention our partners and sponsors in this pavilion: Aeroporti di Roma, Enel, Ferrovie dello Stato Italiane, Leonardo, Rina e Terna. These are partners that have enabled us to create the first entirely sustainable, recyclable pavilion, carbon-free, as I said before, in the history of Expo. So thank you, everybody, for being here. It's a great pleasure and honor to have you here. Now I leave the chair to the UN Global Compact Network Italy, Chairman Marco Frey, who will present the position paper on decarbonization as a result of a joint effort with member companies. Mr. Frey, please, you have the floor.
Commissioner Grisenti, for partnering with the Italian network of the Global Compact to officially launch our position paper on business and decarbonization, a just and inclusive transition. We are delighted that the Minister of Sustainable Infrastructures and Mobility of Italy, Enrico Giovannini, will address our event, acknowledging the great work he's doing and has to be done in making the Italian transportation and mobility sector more sustainable. I would also like to Sandro Giambo, the CEO and Executive Director of the UN Global Compact, to be here today with us to give international support to our work on such an urgent issue. We all know that we are not on track to achieve the objective of the Paris Agreement, as well as the goal 13 of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The controversial result of COP26 that saw a postponement of the fossil fuel phase-out opened new challenges for governments to raise the bar in the next COP in Egypt for new mandatory commitments. In this context, the private sector is called to play its part to reduce both direct and indirect emissions and to raise the level of ambition for a net zero economy by 2050. The good news is that companies, particularly those joining the UNGCN Initiative, are taking this task seriously, aware that decarbonization is not only a global responsibility, but also a long-term strategic issue. For this reason, we decided to develop a position paper, working from February to December 2021, in collaboration with the technical partner Carbon Sync and a group of companies already participating in the UN Global Compact Initiative. The aim of the paper was to showcase and highlight the commitment of the Italian private sector on climate ambition and decarbonization. The document is structured in 4 sections, plus a glossary of decarbonization. The background section sets the stage about the issue of climate change and decarbonization for companies from international and national point of view. It acknowledges that according to UNEP, at the current level of commitment, the increase of the global temperature average is dangerous on path of 20.7 degrees, instead of well below 2 degrees recommended by the Paris Agreement. To keep global warming below 1.5 in this century, the world needs to halve annual greenhouse gas emission in the next 8 years. The European Union is playing a leadership role in climate action, with the launch in 2018 of the Green Deal to achieve climate neutrality by 2050, with the intermediate target of reducing emission by 55% by 2030. The Next Generation EU fund, set up to support European member states in this recovery from the crisis generated by the COVID pandemic, is also strongly oriented towards transition and climate change, as well as the Italian National Recovery and Resilience Plan. In the second section of the paper, the companies identified challenges of opportunities and decarbonization for the private sector, related to both the internal corporate dimension as well as the external one. The internal aspects have been analyzed following the TCFD structure based on the issue of the governance, strategy, risk management, metrics and targets. As external elements, the themes of innovation and digitalization, finance supporting sustainable development, the social dimension of the transition, the involvement of SMEs and suppliers, the role of territories and young generations, the permitting and the concrete implementation of the National Recovery and Resilience Plan were explored. The third section of the paper was the focus of our work. 28 Italian companies, already UNGC participants, contributed to the paper with a best practice that is representative of their commitment towards decarbonization. The cases address challenges and opportunities described in the second section of the document, showcasing companies' effort and innovative solutions. The sector involved are electricity and multi-utilities, as well as manufacturing, industrial, financial and support services, transports, fashion and luxury, food and beverages, the most representatives of the so-called made in Italy. Since the draft position paper has been used as a preparatory document for our high-level meeting on decarbonization held in May 2021, the conclusion of the paper have been emerging from the insights shared by the CEOs and presidents involved. They focus on three aspects. One, the need for a strong and effective public-private partnership in mobilizing economic resources toward decarbonization, starting from electrification and renewables. Second, the involvement of sustainable suppliers and SMEs in the comprehensive sustainable corporate strategy to disseminate a culture of sustainability within the whole sphere of influence of the company. Third, the need to create external enabling conditions for managing and supporting the transition from an economic, regulatory, and cultural point of view. In this regard, the National Recovery and Resilience Plan will be a key opportunity for a real, inclusive and sustainable transformation of our economies and our country. We hope that you will find the paper inspiring. From our side, we will continue to work closely with our companies to support them in the challenging path towards decarbonization. I would like to thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Frey, for your remarks. And now I give the floor to Minister Enrico Giovannini for his speech and contribution. Thank you, Minister, for being with us.
Good morning, everybody. It is a great pleasure to be again with you in this fantastic pavilion, although in a virtual way. The topic that this event is discussing is absolutely key. As Marco Frey had said, the Italian companies are undertaking a very important and radical transformation towards sustainability. Unfortunately, not all of them, which means that we have to work a lot in order to speed up the transition, the engagement, but also to convince them, especially medium-sized enterprises and small-sized enterprises, that there is no alternative, as Margaret Thatcher was saying in a completely different context many years ago. There is no alternative for good reasons. First, the change in preferences of consumers, especially young people, have already changed quite radically the way in which they make decisions. And if companies want to have a future, they must be able to accommodate this change. Second, public administrations, public policies have chosen, especially in some parts of the world, the European Union, I would say, is the world champion in this respect, sustainability as a key principle, taking very tough decisions that require public policies coherent with these decisions, but also private companies' effort in order to accommodate and benefit from this. For example, in my sector, we have changed the name of the ministry from infrastructures and transport into sustainable infrastructures and mobility. This has an implication not only on what we are going to build over the next 10 years and later on, but especially on how. The new guidelines issued by our ministry to design the feasibility projects in terms of sustainability, with the inclusion of a sustainability report on the project before decision is made about who is going to implement the project, is really a game changer. But sustainability is not only an environmental issue, as social and economic implications and governance, as the ESG criteria clearly demonstrate. Therefore, for all the interventions, all the investments, all the implementations of the National Resilience, Recovery and Resilience Plan, financed by the EU money, we have clearly identified some criteria for choosing companies who benefit mainly women and young people in terms of employment. This means that we are looking at the sustainability concept really in a holistic way and not just looking at environmental dimensions. Of course, this work, this approach, needs to be extended to all investments, not only those financed by the European funds. The principle of do not significant harm, which is a key principle of the Recovery and Resilience Facility, will be and is being extended already to other investments financed by national funds. Investments in railways, in development of green ports, in the maintenance of the road system, and so on and so forth. Local transport innovation will be all developed taking into account this principle. And this week we will present an approach based on a scoring technology and methodology in order to assess projects from this point of view. The guidelines for the new railways already incorporate this kind of approach. What I'm trying to argue, in other words, is that if public policies are coherent with the Paris Agreement and other orientations taken by the European Union, the way in which tenders and projects will be run in the next 10 years will be radically different. And those companies who will be ready to this change will have an incredible business opportunity, both at national level, but also at international level, because I'm sure we will hear about this later on. Several countries around the world, I would say the entire world, is moving in this direction. Therefore, those who are on the forefront from a competitive point of view will be able to sell their products and their services all over the world. Last point I would like to make is the role of finance, because private finance must complement the investments made by the public authorities. And this is where we are trying to identify new opportunities, especially for financing infrastructure, sustainable infrastructures. On the 4th February, we will present two very important reports, one on the impact of climate change on sustainable infrastructures and mobility systems, and the other on new ways to mobilize private finance through public-private initiatives in order to invest more on sustainable infrastructures. And this will be especially important in the sector of housing, where we need not only to increase energy efficiency and sustainability principles, but also where there are great opportunities for companies to regenerate our cities. In conclusion, the topic of this meeting is really central, and I welcome the report presented today by Global Compact Network Italy, because clearly demonstrates how many companies are already on this new path and the opportunities that the entire manufacturing and economic system that operates in Italy and in Europe has to increase profitability, increase employment, good employment, decent work, as the ILO says, and improve finally the environmental outcomes in order to put at the core of all our actions sustainable and equitable well-being for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Giovannini. Thank you very much for your contribution to our discussion. Now we have the honor to give the floor to Sandro Giambo. As I said before, is the CEO of the UN Global Compact. Mrs. Giambo, please, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody, and it's truly an honor, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and business leaders, to join you here from the Italian Pavilion at Dubai Expo. I have to say, those who have not been here, allow me to do some small publicity on your behalf. Truly, truly fantastic pavilion. I've spent, I think half an hour going through. I'm so amazed at the depiction of Italian history, culture, art, but most so technology, innovation, including space exploration. So congratulations also to the team that has put together this expo. I think you've done a truly befitting job for Italy. Very well done. I'm honored to speak at this event, which really shows the commitment to Italian companies to climate issues and to decarbonization. It's an agenda that is very important for our work at the UN Global Compact. So allow me to give a very special thanks to Dr. Paolo Glisenti, General Commissioner of Italy at the Expo Dubai, who has partnered with the Global Compact Network in Italy to co-organize this event. And also greetings and thank you very much to Enrico Giovannini, who has just spoken, the Minister for Sustainable Infrastructure and Mobility. And thank you for laying out really the importance and the imperative of this agenda, not only for Italy, for the EU, but for the world as a whole. And welcome to all of the companies who are joining the event remotely. Allow me to talk a little bit about the UN Global Compact and what we do. We're the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative. We now have 15,000 companies across 160 countries in 69 country-based local networks, of course, including Italy, that is very near and dear to us. The Italian network, as you heard from Mr. Marco Frey, and greetings to you as well, and Daniela, has more than 420 companies, a number which has increased by over 80% in just 3 years. I must congratulate you for that extensive effort. The network continues to grow, primarily with its involvement in climate action and many other key strategic areas. In the past year, the Italian network has organized numerous events, especially in the lead up to COP26. And I firmly believe that this important paper being presented today on Italian business and decarbonization, as well as looking forward to just transition, really represents a strong collaboration between the Global Compact, the Italian local network, and certainly our businesses. You know, as the Minister has laid out, we're really in a critical era. It has been called Code Red for Humanity. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has also said we really must recover through climate action and focus on climate mitigation, adaptation and resilience, and finance. We know that the outcome of COP26 may not have been as ambitious as we expected, but certainly we look forward to a future of strong commitments in all these areas. At the UN, we stress the need to continue to decarbonize economies, to phase out coal, and shifting fossil fuel subsidies towards renewable energy. And in this regard, the private sector has a very key role to play on this road to green recovery and green future. It's very critical also to scale innovation and send strong market signals that capital, resources, and wealth should flow to value chains and to communities and to businesses that are certainly green. A key part of how we advance corporate climate action is through Science-Based Targets Initiative, and the UN Global Compact is a founding partner. Today, we have over 2,200 companies that are taking action and 1,000 companies with science-based targets. Of these companies, the 1,000 are committed to our Business Action for 1.5 Degrees campaign, urging companies to set even more ambitious targets, and I'm very sure that many of our Italian companies will continue to do so. We know, and as we've heard, reducing emissions amongst our businesses is key to securing that 1.5 degrees future that we all need. However, we all need to do more. In many ways, at the business and the private sector level, there's a lot of self-declaration of net zero commitments and targets, but we really must be sure that these are grounded in science and that they will definitely help us reach the targets. So our science-based targets work allows us to provide guidance, criteria, and recommendations to make sure that businesses are truly on the trajectory to 1.5 degrees. Last year, we launched a Climate Ambition Accelerator, a program to help businesses gain skills and knowledge to cut emissions in line with climate science. I'm very sure a number of Italian businesses also took part in that. So as we look forward to 2022, and certainly very much in line with the theme of this paper being launched today, we will also launch an innovation lab or a think lab on the just transition. We launched this at COP26 and are now actively recruiting for business membership. I think it's very important that we ensure a just transition, an equitable transition, and a job-rich transition to a low-carbon economy. And we hope to partner with businesses to think, to define, and to shape leadership in these areas. So once again, I'd like to thank you all for generously hosting us here at the Italian Pavilion at Dubai Expo. I'd like to sincerely thank the Minister for providing those broad framework comments about the task at hand. I'd like to thank the Italian Local Network for your continued collaboration and the many Italian partners who continue to do very important work for us as the Global Compact. And for those of you engaging in the work in the climate action space, let us raise the ambition and let's be sure that we can work towards science-based actions and targets. So congratulations on the launch of this paper. I think we're on a very important trajectory for climate action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ojambo, for your presence here. It's a great honor for us, for your intervention. Now I leave the floor to Mr. Frey to lead the roundtable among our companies. Thank you, Mr. Frey, again, for being with us and for leading the discussion now. Thank you. I pass you the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Giovannini and Sanda, for your supportive speeches. As the private sector is one of the strongest partners of government in addressing climate and emission reduction challenges, we would now like to hear from companies themselves about their experiences. A consistent number of Italian UNGC companies contributed to the position paper, sharing perspectives and best practices. I would take this occasion to thank them all for their support to this work that highlight their strong commitment and action on decarbonization, now and in the future. I'm pleased to invite to join me in this virtual discussion the companies that participated to the position paper and which are also supporting the Italian pavilion at Expo Dubai. We will start with Ernesto Ciora, Head of Innovability Enel Group, and Massimiliano Gari, Head of Innovation and Market Solutions, Terna, companies working on energy and electricity and which have committed in science-based target initiative. Dr. Ciora, your company has set very ambitious target on decarbonization. How does Enel's strategy on electrification support these objectives? How do you consider the role of electrification in the ecological transition process promoted by the National Recovery and Resilience Plan?
Ciao Marco, ciao everybody. Enel has a clear purpose open power for a brighter future. We empower sustainable progress. And it describes a company fully committed on one SDG, SDG number 13. A company that is fully focused on creating value for all the stakeholders. So the energy transition is our core business. This is not something that is disturbing us. This is not something that unfortunately urges us to adapt ourselves. Our strategy has been defined to adopt as a corporate mantra SDG number 13, and the decarbonization as the most powerful opportunity to increase value for the shareholders, for the employees, for the communities where we operate, for the environment, and for the rest of the stakeholders that are working with us. Enel today is the largest producer of renewables in the world. So more renewables we will produce, more renewables the world will produce, better we will be. And on the other side, we are fully focused on adaptation in innovation of our grids to be able to dispatch such energy flows that are not as predictable as they were the fossil fuel energies. The grids must become more flexible, more resilient. That's why we have launched a new company, Grid Expertise, that is a company that not only helps our grids, but also other DSOs and TSOs to adapt themselves, to become more resilient, to become more innovative. We don't want just to adapt ourselves to decarbonize ourselves, and we have a strong commitment to become fully decarbonized on the year 2040. We want to help other companies, to enable other companies to be decarbonized. That's why, for us, this energy transition is a powerful, amazing opportunity. And we don't see competitors, we see partners. I use the metaphor quote from Star Wars. There are Jedis, there are Siths. The Jedis are all the companies, all the institutions that want to push on the accelerator of the energy transition. So they are Jedis. We want to help them, we want to be helped by them, we want to cooperate with them, because there is a long journey and a huge work that we must do. So there are not competitors if they want to really push the accelerator on the accelerator of the energy transition. On the other side, there are the Siths. The Siths, they want to create obstacles toward the energy transition. They don't want to decarbonize the world. These are the competitors or the enemies. Those ones who don't want really to decarbonize the world. And these are problems. These are enemies not only of Enel, but of the whole humanity, because the risks are too tremendous that we need to work together, to cooperate, to really decarbonize such a wonderful world that we have and we live in.
Thank you very much, Ernesto, for your strong commitment about our challenge. Dr. Gagli, Terna is an important transmission system operator in Italian electric system. How can decarbonization drive the company to play its role of transition enabler? In 2020, Terna joined the Science Based Target Initiative, obtaining its target approval. How has the company developed and implemented this process? Which value has the Science Based Target Initiative to the company strategy?
First of all, good morning, and I'm very happy to be part of this panel, and I think this is one of the most important, I won't say the one most important, but one of the most important goal that the world as a whole wants to achieve. And I think it's a very key for the future of our next generation. So we do have to leave a world that is better than the one we found when we were born. So I think this is one of the most important missions that each one of us has to have. Terna, as we say in our industrial plan that is called Driving Energy, we do have this central role in the capability to manage and to coordinate all the effort that have to be put in the network of Italian transmission network. And also at the European level, because the Italian network is interconnected with mostly all Europe, from east to west, from north, even to south, we hope in the future. So, as this core of our business, then it's very important that we know how to enable the transition that the energy is having. What does this mean to go from 20, that is the actual amount of gigawatt power installed in renewable energy in Italy? What does it mean to come from this to 70, 80, 100? That probably will be the next targets that we will have. What does it mean to move from 800 big energy producer to 800,000 energy production facility connected to the network? And then there comes, as my friend Ernesto was saying, here comes where we have to work together. Nobody will be able to achieve this kind of result and to address such kind of complexity by its own. So we do need to work together toward this future. What does it mean? It means innovation. It means more flexibility on the network. It means opening the network to the participation of more and more and more actors. The famous electric community that we are talking in Europe especially, but also about the prosumers and also about the electric mobility, the storage. So that's a very complex environment that is creating. And to handle the complexity, I do believe that innovation and technology are the keys to be able to address those complexities. So that's why we do think Terna has this kind of role. And on the other side, on the science-based target, they were approved in May 2021, after, of course, a process where we had, in collaboration with Carbon Sync, to have an assessment on our emissions, Scope 1, 2, and 3, and everything. So we have right now we have a goal set for ourselves for 2030 of a reduction of 460,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. That's a huge target for us. That goes through the commitment on a concrete, ambitious target that is in line with our business plan, that is in line with what are we investing in our network to reduce the loss and to help the connection and the flexibility of the market, to drive as much as possible the decarbonization process, making possible the alternatives. Because normally, if you think about renewable energy, all the requests are in the south of Italy, because of course, just because of the weather conditions. But the consumption are more concentrated in the north of Italy. And so we do have to enable this flow of energy that is the opposite of when the network was created. So everything has to work together to get there. We have a very ambitious plan that is about 9 billion euro in 5 years. And almost, I would say, we are still, I don't remember if it's already formal approved, but as for our own analysis and the analysis that we are conducting, we are almost 95% of our investment are green by the new European taxonomy. So I think that's the main meaning of why does it mean for Terna to have a science-based target. A number that can be measured, a target that can be achieved, but also and mainly a dream that can be realized.
Thanks a lot. I think that your commitment and insights are very useful to push also our country and the whole companies inside it in this direction. Then I would like to welcome the other speakers, the second part of our roundtable. Thank you, Ernesto, again. And I would like to welcome Marco Troncone, CEO of Aeroporti di Roma, and Fabrizio Favara, Chief Strategy Officer, Ferrovie dello Stato Italiano, to discuss together the issue of decarbonization related to the mobility and transport, one of the pillars in 2020 Expo Dubai General Teams. Marco, thank you.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello, hello. How are you?
Hello, fine, thank you. Airports and planes are considered high-risk industry in terms of pollution and emissions. How Aeroporti di Roma has structured its decarbonization to this commitment? To decarbonization, sustainable finance can be a strong ally towards the environment and net zero economy. How has ADR leveraged finance to increase its positive impact and affirm its sustainability strategy? Please, Marco.
Okay, thank you for these good questions, whose answers you have an idea about, because we are, of course, working together also on this front. Yes, we're considered high-risk industries, right or wrong that it is, this is the reality. I think it's right. We also embed a certain risk in terms of carbon footprint. However, many of the airport players say that the airport industry or the aviation industry actually accounts only for 1.9%, less than 2% of the global emissions. So, you know, the contribution is relative. But I'm saying, I will say that actually this is, in a way, bad news, because this means that the problem is enormous. The aviation industry actually produces some, I think, 1 billion tons CO2 a year, out of a total global emission of some 50 billion tons. So we basically part, maybe not at the major part, but part of an enormous problem. So of course we have to take our responsibility, and definitely we want to do it. In this front, of course, as you know, we have taken up the challenge seriously, not today, not yesterday, but also a few years ago. We were one of the first airports to gain the reference accreditation when it comes to setting the targets and define the action plans vis-à-vis decarbonization. So the Airport Carbon Accreditation, which is the accreditation that the ACI, the Airport Council International, issues, were one of the first to get the first levels back in 2011. So more than 10 years ago, and we were the first one in Europe last March, if I will remember, to gain the highest level, the level 4+, which is the transition level. So certainly something we're taking seriously, and certainly we are, of course, also defining targets which must be proportionate to the gravity, if you like, of the criticality. Hence, we have set the target to become net zero for the airport infrastructure no later than 2030, when only less than a year ago, basically the reference target was 2050. So we are anticipating that target significantly. And as you know, we're working every single day to see if and how we can actually bring this forward even further. That's for sure. So how do we do it? How do we want to intend to do it? We basically, well, to be concrete, we're working on a couple of fronts. One is electrical generation. We have a cogeneration plant in the airport with which we're pretty happy with. It's very efficient, but unfortunately this burns methane, which is clearly not good. So we'll be sadly dismantling this generation unit and replacing this with a couple of major photovoltaic plants for a total power installed of 60 megawatts. And that will be happening in the next 3 to 4 years. And on a second front, we are switching all our vehicles in the airport to electrical. And this will also call not only for a major fleet renewal, but also for, of course, also for a deployment of a distribution grid. So we will be releasing at least 500 charging points. We'll see if immediately or in the second wave that will be a smart grid, so a last generation vehicle-to-grid kind of concept. So this will be basically allowing us to bring our own emissions to zero. Of course, this is not for free. This will be calling major investments in the region of 100 million euros, especially on these two fronts. And we're doing this also with, of course, we're also with the help of a number of partners. We're talking with Enel, with others. With NLX, we also have also won an opportunity to couple with our photovoltaic plants a storage unit made of second life batteries. This is a major effort that we brought forward exactly with NLX, and we also gain support from Europe, from the Innovation Fund of Europe. So again, the effort is important. But not only, of course, we're looking at the airport infrastructure, we have to also to see what's happening around us. So I'm referring to accessibility. So passengers coming to the airport today with their cars, of course, they pollute. They leave a footprint. We have to work in order to favor electric mobility also for our passengers. Again, the charging stations will help on this, but also favor, unfortunately losing some revenues maybe on parking, on another business line, favor access by train. So we have a plan together with Ferrovie dello Stato, and Fabrizio knows it perfectly, to expand the capacity of our railway station integrated in the terminal, to expand the capacity of the line connecting the airport with the city, and a number of other infrastructures in order to favor access by train. And then, of course, the big thing, which is aircrafts. So aircrafts, of course, account for, I think, 90% plus of the total problem. So, of course, this is where the problem really lies. And of course, the answers may be different and with different time horizons. Firstly, and we see this already happening in other member states of the Union, so I'm referring to France, but not only. Soon, short-haul flights will be progressively phasing out in favor of connections by train. So firstly, we're working again, and this is beside Ferrovie dello Stato, and also within the greater policies also of our government, we're working in order to introduce a much higher penetration of intermodality, so integration of the train access, mode with the air mode. So a full integration, which is an infrastructural integration and a commercial/service integration. Not immediately easy to be done, but this is something that definitely in the next year will happen. This will be also releasing a bit the burden of CO2, especially on shorter flights, which on a per mileage or per passenger basis are the heaviest one. And then there is all the rest. All the rest, the most immediate answer will be sustainable aviation fuel, which is a drop-in solution, immediately implementable, that doesn't call for any significant investment in the distribution grid. So this is really a ready-to-go solution. Unfortunately, the cost levels and the volume levels are not there yet. So even though we're doing a lot of efforts, again, beside our domestic oil major, and also ITA Airways, which was one of the first airlines adopting this solution back in last October. Although we put in a lot of efforts in order to introduce SAF, and we're doing this, this will also call necessarily for a support policy in order to incentivize the production, which is not there yet, and of course the utilization of such fuel. So this is a fully comprehensive plan, which of course we're putting forward. All that plan, and also again those targets need to be concrete, credible, in order to really attract a favorable, let me say, attitude of the policymakers. We're starting to basically define our sector as a high-risk one. The European Commission let the aviation sector fall within the harmful sectors, as you know. So we're basically failing in respecting the principle of do not significant harm. Hence, we are not eligible to receive the next Generation EU funds, which is to us very counterintuitive, to say the least. So we need to work, however, without complaining, to be really, again, concrete, credible, and to really deserve support. That is why we also, as you were mentioning, also finance, we are placing all these actions, these targets within our financial policy. We are, I would say, forerunners in the airport space, but we're also followers and inspired by other sectors. I'm referring to NL in particular, which was one of the first actually, the inventor, if I can say so, of these sophisticated new financial instruments. I mean, I'm referring to sustainability-linked bonds. And we were the first airport to issue an SLB bond back in last year. This is very important because basically this doesn't necessarily, let me say, provide the headache to assess whether those proceeds are really invested in green initiatives, which may be criticized in terms of greenwashing, and then there is a lot of work to do on taxonomy. I mean, it's pretty much complex. It's much simpler. You just commit to the results, which is something, at the end of the day, is what everybody's looking at. Our sustainability-linked bond reports and incorporates the target of net zero at 2030, which I was referring, confirms the commitment to maintain the highest level of certification of the, which I was referring before, the 4+, and if a more higher certification, we will be obliged to get it, and also incorporates some targets on access. And if we fail in reaching those objectives, we will be penalized, not only in material terms, because our cost of debt will be raising, but also in terms of reputation, because we also commit to every year to be monitored on this path towards net zero, be monitored by third parties, independent third parties. So credibility and being concrete is of the essence. This is why we also incorporated this in our financial policy. To have a positive and, let me say, productive attitude is of the essence in order to deserve support and ultimately, hopefully, gain support by our policymakers. And this is where we are.
Thank you very much, Marco, for showing us the connection between plan, strategy, investment, and also partnership. Regarding this, Dr. Farah, we have to recognize that the mobility sector can lead to negative externalities, also linked to Italy's very peculiar physical territory. How is Ferroviario Stato facing these challenges to increase efficiency in a sustainable way? As the private sector is also called to create a culture of sustainability both inside and outside the company, how Ferroviario Stato managed to involve other functions besides sustainability to create an internal culture on climate action and importance to reach a carbon neutrality?
Okay, Marco, thank you. First of all, good morning at all. It's a very pleasure to stay with you today. It's very, very important forum to discuss about sustainability and mobility for the future. Yeah, you have totally reason. The transport sector is responsible for almost 25% of total air pollution in Italy. But I think that the most important way to underline is that it's also with a growth rate of almost 3.2% per year in the last 30 years. So it's the only sector that didn't achieve any kind of reduction along its history. This is the key factor in which we need to understand what we can do to change this situation. It's also important to say that different transport modes pollute in a different way, and in the same light that some of modality are more sustainable than others. Just to give some, let's say, KPIs. The road transport, that represents almost 92% of journeys, pollute for 94% of the total transport emission. On the other way, the railway sector, which represents almost 6% of total journey, pollute for only 0.1% of the total emission. So let me say, it's also a different way to focus on what railways can do. It's clearly important to say that net zero for railway sector is fundamental. But let me say, the difference is not to change between 0.1 and 0. The strategic mission, the key factor to change the world is a different way of use of the railways infrastructure. To focus on the railways infrastructure and the railways as the key factor for the sustainability of the entire transport sector of Italy. This is, I mean, the most important focus that we need to face and to find a way to right use this infrastructure. This is also true that Italy has a complex geography, and this is also very hard to provide infrastructure. Many territories in this moment didn't have the same accessibility rates. If you think to the south, if you think to the connection between the south and the north, then we think to the connection between the south and the European and Europe. And this is, first of all, the first field in which we need to work, to cover and to solve any kind of infrastructural gap that are across the country. After the infrastructural gap, we need to work to accessibility. Then we need to work on the stations. Railway stations first of all, need to be refurbished, but it need to be refurbished with a different environmental vision, in which the railway station will become a multi-service and multimodal interchanges nodes of transport. A key place in which rail, road, and other mobility will be interconnected to achieve a better and a more stronger use of the railway infrastructure. This is, I think, and I want to underline the main topics to see through the transport sector, mainly on the, let's say, not air connection, but on ground connection. To change the world, we all need to use more the train. I don't want to say more a specific transport operator. No, overall, big picture. We all need to use more the train, because the more we use the train, more we reduce the pollution of the entire transport sector. I think that the figures that I say at the beginning is really clear to enforce this mission. On the other way, it's very important what we are doing in Ferrovie. For example, I want to underline the new regional trains that we are really introducing in the last 3-4 years, and we will keep on the same way in 2022 and 2023, because we are refurbishing and changing all the regional train in Italy. It's a very important key factor, because they reduce by almost 30% the energy consumption. And on the same way, because we always, and it's clear, we always talk about energy consumption, but I want to underline also another green eco-sustainable item that we need to talk also about recycling. And the new regional train are recyclable up to 97%. It's important because every single action that could improve the situation is a key factor for the future. Because as the Minister Giovannini said at the beginning, there are no alternatives. It's very simple. At the end, we are talking about philosophy. It's very simple. There are no alternatives. If the road transport pollutes for 97%, and the railway sector pollutes for 0.1%, I think that there are no alternatives also in this. And I want to underline also for the freight services, it's very important, it's the same. If you think to Italy, it's the second manufacturer country in Europe, but it's a country that is completely without raw materials. We import raw materials to export finished or semi-finished goods. And then this is the meaning why logistics is the key factor to achieve a production and to maintain a production in Italy, first of all. And then logistics is a key factor in which we need to work for sustainability of this sector. And again, the railway connection, the railway link is the only answer that I see to change this type of world.
Yes.
Let me close in a very simple way. Then, when we talk about environmental, social governance politics, when we talk about to become an ESG champion, at the end, I think I want to underline also this point. We need to focus on the S, social. Okay, it's clear what we need to do. How means to change the mindset, to change the behavior, to spread awareness. And this is something that could be deployed with the help of of the whole system. This is not something that could be achieved by an operator more than another operator. It's a task of vision. I'm happy regarding the changes in the political behavior and the political topics of the Minister of Transport, from transport to mobility and sustainability. But I mean that also university, also school, also the society need to be involved in these changes. And from this point, I think we need also to achieve a new politics, a new way to think about how to deploy the future.
Yes, thanks a lot, Fabrizio. Thanks, Marco. We are quite late, so we can start with the third group of presentation. For the last segment of our roundtable, focus on so-called hard-to-abate sector, I would like to introduce Ugo Salerno, CEO of RINA, Renata Mele, Senior Vice President Sustainability, Chief Technology and Innovation Office, Leonardo, and Andrea Maggiani, founder and CEO, Carbon Sync. Salerno, in the position paper, RINA described a very interesting case about Hydra project, a pilot example of decarbonization of the steel industry. As far as it could be a real challenge, how RINA is facing it and benefiting from the usage of renewable resources? Which are the steps your company is taking in the progressive path to guarantee success to your sustainability strategy?
First of all, good morning and thank you for the invitation to this very interesting forum. One of the pillars of RINA, I say the most important pillars of RINA, is ESG, and therefore our company is fully committed in this direction. And if we speak about a very important part of ESG, that is the energy transition, then this is an area where we have a commitment, a total commitment. And taking into account that the energy transition and the objectives that we have necessarily put to our community, it's so important and so challenging that I think that is not an oversaying to say that this is the biggest challenge that humanity is going to take in its history. And therefore we first of all must think that all the potential technologies that we can use are necessary in order to obtain success. Let me go back to your question and relevant to Hydra. Hydra project is a project linked to the steel industry. Steel industry is maybe one of the most important hard-to-abate industries that are taken into account for decarbonization. Steel industry in particular is an industry that emits about 7 to 8% of global CO2, and therefore it is a very important polluter in this moment. In order to decarbonize this industry, we have to use all the potential technologies, and one of the most important to be used is to apply hydrogen to the whole process. And in RINA, of course, we are studying, and we are not only studying, but also making experiences, direct experiences in the use of hydrogen. And therefore, before speaking about Hydra, I will tell you what are our experiences in these. For example, we are already implementing experiences with the mixture of hydrogen and methane, and we have done, for example, an experiment with Forge Vienna, that is a forging company, for producing a forged piece with 30% of hydrogen into the mix of methane and hydrogen. This has been the first time in the world that has been done, and has been done with a burner that is the usual traditional burner used for methane. It has proven to be successful, and therefore this is a way forward to start the decarbonization of the steel industry. Another important thing in order to use hydrogen into the steel industry is to have pipelines that are able to transport such hydrogen, and take into account that only electricity cannot be used to have an integral cycle. We need to have combination of electricity and hydrogen. In this case, we are testing pipes in order to be used for the transport of hydrogen, and we are doing this in cooperation with SNAM, with whom we are qualifying their 33,000 kilometers network, that is the biggest network in Europe, in order to be able to transport a mixture of methane and hydrogen up to transport 100% of hydrogen. This is underway, and we are confident that most part of their network will be available. We are working also with other companies, for example, with Corinth Pipe Works, that is producing 440 kilometers of pipes in order to be used for transport of hydrogen. And going back to Hydra is a very important project that foresees the construction of, let's say, a small complete steel mill that is working on hydrogen. Therefore, the production of oxygen reduction in iron ore, and also the use of electric arc furnace, all fueled with hydrogen. This is a project that is supported by European Commission and that sees a lot of partners in it, very important, including SNAM, including Enel, including ENI, and including also steel mills that are already working on electric arc furnace and are very interested in directly reduced iron ore to be used directly into direct arc furnaces. I think I have quite concluded my time, but I want just to add a small thing. We at RINA are not big emitters, of course, because we are not producers, but we are an engineering company. We are the biggest Italian engineering company and the certification company, but we are very much committed towards decarbonization, and we will become fully carbon neutral by 2023, so by next year. Of course, we will need to compensate some of the emissions because cars will continue to go and our colleagues will continue to travel, but we are also working in afforestation projects and then in all the projects to get rid of plastic and get rid of paper. So for us, ESG is really a way of living, and taking into account that we are not let's say, the user of one technology, I think our position and independence is guaranteed to the community. Thank you very much, Marco, for having invited us.
Thank you, Ugo. We need the contribution of everybody in this challenge. So all kind of industry and activities can play a significant role. Renata, Leonardo is operating in the aerospace and defense sector, a very challenging one. What is the role of innovation and digitalization in the company's strategy towards the decarbonization? And how important are the partnerships for Leonardo at national and the international level in order to reach its main goals on sustainability?
Thank you, Marco, and good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure for me to be here talking about decarbonization, that I would say the main challenge of our times. And thank you also Global Compact to organize the event. Coming back to your question, I believe that research, innovation, and digitalization are at the core of Leonardo's strategic approach to sustainability. And so they are, in some sense, the keys for us to generate value in the long term, but also to pursue the sustainable development goal and to support and enhance our business. Leonardo is a global player in aerospace, defense, and security. So we preside over strategic technologies, and I believe that they can be central for a structural change in production, but more extensively in society. It all starts with data. Thanks to our ability, experience, knowledge to generate and process information, for instance, using high-performing computing tools, we can be global drivers, developing innovative solutions, and those solutions can enable just and ecological transition. So we think exactly that managing and connecting data is a really source of new and innovative services. We use that data analytics also for ourselves to make strategic choices that guide measurable and sustainable practice. We can say that our approach to sustainability is a data-driven approach. And we started building our sustainability plan on a solid basis of specific KPIs, and we tie the achievement of our objective to measurable elements that we monitor to a dedicated digital platform. So coming back to the decarbonization, it's clear that it's really urgent. We know how urgent it is to act on decarbonization, and so acting on different components that we try to outline in the paper we cooperate to and you presented at the beginning of this session. The first point is, of course, in taking clear commitment on decarbonization at group level. We declare our ambition in reducing CO2 emission, and we link these targets also to the remuneration of the CEO top manager, to make clear that this is a commitment very important for the company. But also in terms of operation, we use a lot of digital solutions to reduce the carbon footprint of our operation. An example is the digital twin solution, the virtual rendering of objects and processes that allow us to redesign, optimize our processes, lowering the environmental impact. But what is really important is looking at our business, so our products and services. As you mentioned before, Leonardo has a wide array of technological solutions, and these solutions can be really important to empower our stakeholder in decarbonization. Solutions to avoid emission, solutions based on Earth observation to manage environmental and climate emergencies, but also solutions for security to improve the resilience of energy grids, infrastructure that are fundamental in enabling energy transition. We are not alone in this path, of course, because, as you know, sustainability is made of shared purposes and efforts. And so in this path, partnerships are really vital to accelerate our ambitions and to create value for all the stakeholders. Just an example, the relevance of our partnership approach is really clear when we look at the long-term and complex research and development cycles that are typical of the aerospace and defense sector. To develop a cutting-edge technology, we need the involvement of the whole value chain, a wide ecosystem made by academia, startups, business partners, peers, clients and suppliers. As was said before, it's difficult to talk about a competitor. We have partners, we have peers, because the fundamental is to accelerate the processes, to gain a better understanding, to understand how to proceed towards our objective, through knowledge sharing and also through enhancement of human capital. Another example is for decarbonization and sustainable mobility in aeronautics. We participate in significant R&D European programs such as Clean Sky, Clean Aviation, programs that are leading the development of new generation on more efficient and decarbonized regional aircraft and tilt rotors. And this is also a real aspect of our long-term research. Last year we launched the network of Leonardo Labs, dedicated to research and development of most innovative technologies and also leveraging on a solid research community.
Thank you very much, Renata. Also for your examples, concrete examples of how we can work together inside the business sector. Now Carbon Sync. Carbon Sync is a company that puts at the core of its activities a skilled support to companies in their journey towards decarbonization. And we have to acknowledge its support in realizing the position paper we are presenting today. According to your experience, Dr. Maggiani, which are the main difficulties SMEs are facing in Italy as opposed to big companies? And how can big companies support the smaller ones, often their suppliers, in decarbonize their operation?
Thanks, Marco, for the questions. Thank you, everyone. Yes, I think that climate commitment is rapidly transferring from large company to the value chain, and so to the SME. And this, I think, is really linked with the fact that, as you can see, investors and consumers became so much aware about climate change and pushing company to disclose more and more information and data on climate strategy, risk, and so on. Of course, the supply chain play a big role because most of the company, I would say, have indirect emission as are the biggest part of their total GHG inventory. So for this reason, I think it's quite really, really important to the big corporate to support the SMEs in their transition, not in the decarbonization, because as you can see, the resources are not the same as the biggest company, and of course they need to have tools, support, engagement, capacity building, and so on to drive that. As we can see in the taxonomy, they also put a big, so they really underline the role of the Scope 3 emissions and also require that. So this is clear that the SME needs to start to measure their emissions at the level of granularity that is really high. And this is also an important aspect, because if you now look at the Scope 3 emissions that are already under the GHG inventory or financial disclosure of most European companies, you would see that most of them are calculated on the spending base. So like, euro per ton of CO2 spending. So these type of data are not, so much precise. And so on, if the big company are able to engage SME in this really, journey, what we can see is the fact that this data became more and more precise and granular. So that will help to, of course, have more precise data and information. On the other hand, I think the SME are more flexible and dynamic, and as we can see now, we see more and more SME, for example, starting to define a science-based targets, more and more participated in CDP supply chain. And we see that quite as a big movement, even here in Italy, where we see logistic company that are, for example, in the automotive supply chain, started to work on the CDP supply chain, but even a company that are, supply product to multinational company at the global level. So I think we should think more on a new way of approach. We call that global. So have a global approach that the big corporate try to implement, but also a local approach that can support SME in their transition. Another interesting aspect is also that we see simplified rule. For example, now SBTi is launching the SME simplified rule. So basically, we're going to have more and more SME that could have their own science-based target, for example. And also we can have CDP that also try to simplify that for the SME. So there is a big movement to try to support and adapt the tool that we have for big corporate for the smaller one. The last point I'd like to underline is that now 70% of the FTSE MIB companies under CDP, for example. So it's clear that in order for them to improve their score, they need to engage at the higher level as possible the SME. Finally, just want to say thank you to UN Global Compact, the team, and also to Guido Alfani and Aurora D'Aprile for the support in this decarbonization report. Was really interesting and great activity together. So I think it's really a good example of collaboration between different entities. So congratulations to everyone for the job. And thank you, Marco, for this event.
Thank you to you, Andrea. And we are moving to the conclusion of our event. I would like to warmly thank the speakers involved for sharing their inspiring cases and also topics. And I give now the floor to Daniela Bernacchi, Executive Director of the Italian Network, for the closing remarks. Please, Daniela.
Thank you, Marco, and thank you everyone for joining this interesting event. I'd like to thank you, all the speakers and the moderators, for the support to our morning. We touched on many interesting key points. I'd like to summarize the majority of them. First of all, it's clear to all that sustainability is an essential element, and it's a must in order to recover in a sustainable way. Business are called to raise their level of ambition, as our executive director said, Sando Jumbo, underlining in her keynote speak how we should all aim to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. Again, we touched the theme of the public-private partnership as a value to mobilize resources and find solution for a real inclusive and sustainable transformation of our economies. We touched the themes of technology, digitalization, innovation, many interesting examples. Idea talking about his photovoltaic plant, Arena presenting his hydrogen solution in the steel industry, and again Leonardo with all the activity doing and the digital platform. We also touched the theme of corporate finance as an ally on sustainable development. Many companies are launching SDGs-linked bond, and UNGC as a CFO task force launched in December 2019, asking company to gather the efforts and put resources in corporate finance dedicated to sustainable development and green economy. One of the last arguments was the supply chain and the importance of involving small, medium enterprises. It's clear that large companies have the task of activating multi-stakeholder partnership with small, medium enterprise and accompanying them towards a transition path. Coming to the tools, it's important to monitor results, and it's good to know that now, as Mr. Maggiani of Carbon Sync was saying, we have simplified rules for science-based target that can be used easier from SME. And the last things I'd like to end with is what our Minister Giovannini was saying, that is the social dimension. When we are talking about the environmental dimension, we can't forget the social dimension and the impact we are having on society. All companies engaged also with the European taxonomy have the duty to respect the do not harm principle and the social safeguards. So people and prosperity of the planet goes together. So just to be very quick, today we listen to 7 companies very much engaged towards climate action and share their best practice with us. We do hope that we can inspire other companies and engage them towards a net zero economy together with these leading companies and UNGC and the local network. Let me thank again all the people that work to this event, the Global Compact Network staff as well, and the staff of the Commission and the Italian Pavilion. Thanks for being with us. Have a nice day, everyone.